Welcome back to another episode of SNEED-CAST. I'm Alexa. I'm here with Ken, our VP of Sales and Marketing, and today we're going to be going over our top 5 Titan application videos. So, Ken, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Thanks, Alexa. Yeah, so we back with some more content for you folks, trying to come up with some new ideas. We started to realize, we have a bevy, just huge library of great customer videos that have been sent in to us over the last 5 years. We thought, why don't we go through and highlight some of our favorites, why we like them, what's neat about them, so many different ways to install a date code printer on the production line, so many different types of packaging equipment out there. So just kind of highlight some of our favorites, what we think is neat and cool, and capabilities of the printer, and then hopefully be able to provide some information to customers that might have some similar setups out there. So so in prep for the meeting, this isn't a meeting, I prep for our video today, Alexa. I got kind of picked off my 5 favorites. So I guess we'll just kind of jump right in, really in no particular order, except for the fact that I'm going to save my favorite one for last. So we'll start here with this one here. Boom, boom, boom. We'll click it off here, let everybody start watching it. Our nice banner intro. Yeah, so this is, what we have here is a jar lid printer. Really the main highlight of this one, the setup itself, is not very crazy. It's a pretty standard production line with moderate speed. But what's really cool is the white ink.
Right.
So being able to print with that white ink on there. Let me get a pause here on that print code. Ooh, let's go back here. Get a nice still with that. There it is. But you see that white code there. That's so nice and crisp on a black background.
Right.
Customers with dark packaging that have to have a date code on there, they'd love being able to print that on there. And when I've been, I know you're a little bit newer to the industry than I am, Alexa, but I've been the last 10, 15 years now. Oh, that makes me sound old. When I first started in this industry, and Brian and Charles and myself, if you needed white ink or colored ink on this type of a dark substrate or dark packaging material, there was only one option. It was continuous inkjet, and that's a pretty pricey option. Not only is continuous inkjet printers normally more expensive than thermal inkjet, but when you get into pigmented bright colors like white and yellow, then you even have to have an additional higher end printer to be able to print those dark colors, or bright colors, sorry. So now that, when I first came back to working with Brian 5 years ago, that was one of the biggest developments in thermal inkjet was now we can run white and yellow inks in these cartridges. So customers are able to get these beautiful codes at a fraction of the cost of what they pay for if other types of equipment. A pigmented CIJ printer can easily run north of $10,000, maybe $15,000.
Right. So I know you mentioned the whole.
Yeah, I've been dying.
No, you're good. So I know you mentioned the whole black, yellow, white ink and everything. But when it comes to our Titan, there's so many different products out there, so many different colors that we're working with. What other ink colors do we offer for our Titan?
Good question. Yeah. So with the Titan printer, it definitely has, of all the different SNEED-JET series, it has the widest range of colors. Black being the most common, white, yellow. Then we also have red, green, blue. We have a UV invisible ink that can only be seen under a black light, so that's typically used for counterfeiting purposes and things of that nature. And what else is neat too is all the different color options is that we can switch from one color to the next in less than 2 minutes, even in less than a minute, really, depending on how quick you are.
Right.
Again, talking about other technologies, if it's a DoD valve jet printer or a continuous inkjet printer, you typically, once you put a color in that machine, that's the color for life. So if you're going with that technology, and if you're a co-packer, like a lot of our customers are, well, co-packers, they package for a lot of different customers.
Yeah.
Different customers have different packaging requirements. So one customer might have a black pouch, and the other customer might have a white pouch. Well, you can't print with white ink on white or black ink on black. So in the past, they would literally have to have a white ink printer and a black ink printer. Whereas now, with the Titan system, they can have the same printer. If they have a switch over, it's just as simple as changing the ink out. You pop one cartridge out, put the other cartridge in, and that's it.
Right, and then I know when it comes to our inks, we talk about how dry times are looking 3 to 4 seconds. Does the same thing apply whenever we're working with different colored inks?
Yeah, for the most part. So all of our colored ink are fast-drying inks. So they're all solvent-based. They're all made to dry on glass, plastic, metal, any type of hard surface or non-porous surface. Dry time can vary. In some instances, less than a second, almost instant. Sometimes it might need an extra 2-3 seconds to cure. Of course, if you want to check and make sure that it's the right dry time for you, we have a print sample lab at our headquarters here. just over here behind us, actually, where the technical services guys sit. So if you're curious, if you want to see the color, how bright it is on your package, if you want to see that dry time, and make sure that it works well for you within your operation, go to our website. On the resources tab, there's a print sample request form. You can fill that out and then send in your materials. We're happy to print on it for you and answer any questions for you. Of course, if you can't find that tab, give us a call, 833-926-3464. Talk to one of the sales guys. They can help you out. We can get you taken care of. That way you can get the sample ahead of time, kind of make sure that it's the right thing you're looking for before you commit to buying a piece of equipment.
Right. So aside from color, what other kind of applications do we usually see our Titan in?
And it's such a great range, which is a perfect kind of segue into some of these other videos. So
Right.
the other ones are going to get into a lot kind of a different setup. So, I picked this one because I wanted to highlight that white ink. But a good portion, probably more than half of our customers are doing something like this. It's a very simple conveyor setup. A lot of times with a jar or a bottle or a box passing by and printing. That can get kind of boring after a while. We're just watching that same thing over and over again. But there's a lot of other really cool packaging equipment out there, as you've learned at some of the trade shows we've been to.
For sure.
So we'll get into some of those. I'll just kind of pick one at random here. So, here. This is what's called a stick pack machine. So for those of you, if you already work with a stick pack machine, you know what it is. In case you don't know what it is, a stick pack is like those little, stick packs. A lot of times they come with like little flavors that you can put in your water bottle. You can get like little energy drinks. You can dump it in a water bottle, change the flavor.
Oh, like the little individual ones.
Yeah, exactly. You can get a little Kool-Aid makes them. All the different ones. They make those little. They look, and then sometimes you even see sugar at restaurants or in those types of packets. So that's what this machine is. It's also a vertical form fill machine with the printer attached to it to print that date code. Of course, we got our. So here we go. See, it's got a solid. The material itself, before it's formed, is a flat, a flat piece of material that just rolls down straight. We have our controller right there. That's a 7-inch touchscreen controller. That's where the customer. That's the brains of the operation. That's where the customer does their programming, sets up their date codes, expiration dates, lot codes, barcodes, whatever. It's all done right there on that machine. And that's just really that's the brains of the operation. There's no ink flow or pumps or anything in here. It's just that control, and you see there's the cables here that kind of lead off to where the print head is. And now the customer is gonna. What's neat about these, right? These are all customer submitted videos, so that's why sometimes they look a little. They're not always the best angles, but we appreciate our customers sending these in. You see this customer has this print head mounted up underneath here, so as that material is flowing by, it's printing. And then here it's coming down and it's being formed. You can see a shot of the code there.
So I actually do have a question about this one. Typically when we've seen other Titan printers, you have the product and then you'll have maybe like a space and then it'll detect the product again. In this case, since it's just continuous, how is it knowing where to print?
Good question. So you asked just the right question. I'm trying to see if they have an angle on it here. I saw it in the clip. I believe this customer is set up, yes. So you can just kind of barely see it right here. Again, apologize, folks, for not always having the great angle here, but this little blue-looking box is one of our contrast sensors, which is designed to basically detect a color change. Typically, what is called there's a registration mark on that material. You can, and essentially, it's usually like a little black square or a black box. That the printer is actually looking for that black box. When that black box goes by, or not the printer, the sensor, when that black box goes by, that's what triggers the print to print each time. As opposed to, like you said, having that traditional gap in the product line to be able to see it go through. And we may even, I'm looking to see if we might be able to see an example of the registration mark here. But I don't necessarily.
Actually, yeah. You can kind of see it out to the red.
You see the red right there above the red there. That's that registration mark, which once it's kind of folded together and the seam is made, you really don't see that, the customer, end user, consumer never really sees that black mark. Or even if they do, they don't think anything of it. That doesn't really mean anything to them. So.
And then another question. In this in this video, we see that the print head is obviously printing right from below. When it comes to that kind of, I guess, not process, but like when it comes to that kind of placement, are you actually getting all of the ink out of the cartridge? Yeah,
that is a good question. It actually ties into our second video too. I'll answer the question first. So typically speaking, yes, thermal inkjet technology, what we focus on in our printers and systems, is limited due to gravity.
Right.
And just to give you the short and the sweet of it, Again, there's no pumps in our system or anything like that that drives the ink, which the benefit of that is that's why we're maintenance free. That's why there's no service and extra parts and all of these things. Catch-22 to that is the fact that because the ink sits inside our cartridge here and it flows down to the print head via capillary action. So there's no pump driving the ink. It's very much a natural flow for the ink to come down to the head to be spit out. So of course, if you take it and you point it upside down, now gravity's working against you.
Right.
And you don't have a big, strong pump to overcome
push it up.
So to answer your question, you are still able to print up, but you're only able to use about 50% of the ink that's in the cartridge.
But when it comes to that other 50%, is it just a matter of switching the orientation?
Good question. Yeah. So it is. Yeah. The cartridge isn't dead.
Right.
You can still print with it. You just can't print up with it anymore.
Okay.
So like you said, you would have to switch to a different orientation, either traditional side printing or even down printing.
Okay.
And you'll be able to get the rest of the ink out of there.
Right.
And that in and of itself is, there's two scenarios we see. I guess there's three for bottom coating, whether customers are comfortable with that. Because at first, I understand it's scary. Oh my God, I'm only getting 50% of my ink.
Right.
That seems like you're losing a lot of value. But to peel that onion back, the customers that do opt to make it, they do the math, and we can do an ink report for you. We can calculate approximately how many prints you're going to get on your message, and then from there we can take that amount and we of course reduce it by 50, and then here's how much you're going to get in that orientation. Now, if we're talking small character printing, which is what we just saw in that previous video and what we're about to see on this video, when you're only printing an 1/8 of an inch character or so, on a full cartridge you can get up to 9 million letters and numbers, 9 million characters on a cartridge. So even if we cut that in half, that's still 4.5 million characters on a full cartridge. Let's say, for the sake of the easy math, there's a 10-digit code on your product. You're still looking at 300,000, excuse me, hiccups, 300,000 or 400,000 products that you can print at half capacity.
Right.
So it's like when we kind of dig into the volume, the customer usage, and kind of sort through all the math, sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. Now, we had customers like, no, I want to get full utilization, and we understand that. That's just a limitation of our technology. But we still see a good number of customers that are comfortable with that number and said that's more than I need, and I can find a way to use the rest of the ink, like you said.
Right.
That's what some of our co-packers will do, or even not necessarily co-packer, but smaller companies that have one printer that's on their primary. It's the same printer they use for their primary packaging and their secondary packaging. So they'll have, the primary packaging is bottom coating, and then they'll use it for their secondary packaging to print on the box to get all the ink out of it. So those are kind of the situations with bottom coating. Little nice segue here. We'll start this video on we have a lot of kombucha customers. We had a couple of videos actually from kombucha customers doing the similar setup. You'll notice this is a can filling line, and again, they have they're printing on the bottom of that can. And they actually did a really nice job. I think it looks to me like they did a custom cutout there at the bottom. If we go back, I'm going to go back a little bit further. Here we go. You can kind of see how that plastic right there looks to be cut out. I think that it looks very much like this customer did a custom modification here to make sure that that print head gets nice and close to the bottom of that can. Because there is another caveat, especially with this particular application we have to think of. And I do believe at the end of their video they show us a picture of their code. So let's just wait till here you go. There we go. So there's that Best Buy code, right? Still nice and clear, and I think I can even, if I do. Yeah, so we got, that looks like they're printing about similar 1/4 inch, maybe an 1/8 of an inch character height.
Right.
Now the other thing with these is, of course, is one thing that comes into mind is throw distance. There's another thing with our Titan series. So typically, and what that is, I should explain, is throw distance is the distance from the print head to whatever it is you're printing on. The paper, the glass, the can, whatever.
Right.
And that's how far the ink can go out. Well, the thermal inkjet technology in the Titan printer is looking at about a 6 millimeter 1/4 inch distance. That's how close it has to be. Roughly. And so if any of you have ever flipped over a Coke can or soda can, there's
that dip.
There's that dip, exactly.
Right.
So a lot of our customers go with the Infinity printer. That's another model we have that can spit that ink further, but we've also, because the Infinity can spit the ink further. But even with the Titan, if you can make that custom modification like this customer did to get it really as close as possible up on that edge, you can still get a pretty nice print there.
So I do have a question. Toward the beginning of the video, we see a sensor that's pointing toward the inside of the can. What's the purpose of that?
So part of so this is because of kind of like similar to what you were talking about earlier in terms of spacing.
Okay.
So right, like if you look at it, normally that sensor would be pointed at the side.
Right.
But there's no spacing in between these cans. So there's no break for that beam to go through. Whereas since these cans are open, there's a break between it's picking up on that because there's that. It's open all the way down in here. It's not registering, so it's basically seeing this as an open space, and then every time it crosses that barrier, that's what's triggering it.
Okay.
Now we do have, this is just our standard sensor that comes with the printer. Our standard sensor works for 80%, of all the different setups that we see out there. We do have custom sensors, like the previous video was a contrast sensor. We have also for this type of thing, especially for can lines, we have what's called an induction sensor. Excuse me. Now I'm not. I'm going to butcher this. Charles is going to get after me for explaining this, but more or less my understanding, it's not quite magnetic, but it's similar to a magnetic principle where it can actually be mounted, and it can detect, even though these cans are all touching, it'll be able to detect the outer edge of each can if it's placed down here on the side. So that would be an option. Of course, this customer was able to make it work without having that added expense. So that's where this customer, straight out of the box, $11.99, they got a printer ready, rock and rolling to go. The only modification it looks like they did was on their existing equipment there. So, all right. Any other questions you can think of, Alexa?
Let's see.
I think we covered it on this one.
Right.
All right. What's the next? So that's that.
I actually think we missed one. We missed the first.
Yeah, I know that's the one.
Oh, okay.
So here we go in a flow wrapper.
Okay.
Typically, flow wrappers are what you see on like your candy bars, Twinkies, things like that. There's a product that's coming through that's getting wrapped. As you can see, similar to that other machine, the material itself is flat and coming off of a roll when it's coming through. And again, this is our contrast sensor here. So this customer is using the registration mark.
Okay.
Yep, there you see that black right there.
Right.
That's that registration mark that you would never even think about as a customer, And you see these trays of goodies, looks like cookies maybe, that are coming through. They're getting wrapped up as they flow past.
So I do have a question. In cases where you don't have trademarks or any kind of symbol, any kind of color for the sensor to pick up on, is there like another attachment that you guys would add to make sure that you're printing in the right spot?
Yes, good question. So the alternative, well, there's two alternatives to this, and one of them will hit in the perfect segue. The second, I'll say that'll be the last video. But
okay.
The other one would be like with an encoder wheel. So you can mount an encoder wheel that can sit on either one of those rolls that we just saw in the machine, and then where that roll is it's basically rotating with the machine. That's plugged into the printer. And then the printer is calculating the rotations per minute. Okay. And then it's using that to determine what you do is you set an interval. So you say, okay, I want to print every 4 inches, or I want to print every 6 inches. Right. You adjust that. It's called the print interval. And then it uses the encoder wheel to measure that distance and then trigger the print, ever so often as you want. Now, then the other way that would potentially be able to do it, we'll see here in our next video. This is kind of my favorite video we've gotten. Easily one of my favorite videos across the last 5 years. Right. So this is a Titan printer. It'll look similar at first. It is a form fill machine. No, actually, this is not a form fill machine because the pouch is already formed. But you see the controller is mounted on the outside here. And it is a fill machine. You'll see here there's a robotic arm that comes and pulls these pouches. But before those pouches there it is pulling the pouch, but you can see the print heads slide back and forth right there. And then it pulls the pouch to get filled. Now this particular, you see there's no sensor here. There's nothing. What's triggering this print is essentially they've wired it into the controller for the overall machine. Right. So this big old filling machine has its own controller. We saw it in the very beginning. You can wire our Titan printers. All of our printers have the ability where you can wire that print trigger from that external source. So it's literally it's the other controller that is sending the signal to the Titan controller to print when it needs to print. Right. And then they have, what's so cool is that this customer made this modification on their own, mounted that printer to a robotic arm that slides back and forth the way that it does, which is just why it's one of my favorite, coolest, and a nice, really nice, clean looking 2-line date code there. Yeah, no, I was going to say, typically we see, the printers in the other videos, they stay stationary. They're just same position the entire time. In this case, we actually get to see it moving back and forth. Yep. And so again, there's a lot of versatility with our printers. a lot of different types of machinery we can set it up on, a lot of different ways we can configure it to print for you. You know, and just kind of to go back to highlight again, you see that is, see, this is the controller for that entire system.
Right.
And so they have a wire. This looks like the custom wire right here. That is wired into their overall system. That is then triggering that print whenever the robotic arm slides across. And that's really that's kind of the last one. I'm gonna check my notes here, but that was kind of the ones that I wanted to highlight there. Again, just kind of wanted for you folks at home that are maybe considering a printer, not sure if our printer will work for your machinery or your packaging equipment. As you can see, it can work on a lot of different types of machinery, and it's just a matter of configuring it properly based on what you're using and what your needs are. Give us a call if you're not sure. We have a lot of great information on the website, but we also have a great team here. Technical service and sales team can answer any of your questions for you. If you call us at 833-926-3464, extension 1, my sales team will be happy to help you configure the right setup for whatever your packaging production line looks like. It gives you the right thing. And the other thing also is you got 30-day window, 30-day performance guarantee. So you have 30 days with the printer after you buy it to get it set up, run some test products through, make sure everything is firing the way you need it to. And if it doesn't work out, can't get it to work on your machinery, we understand that. We understand there's a lot of different variables that come into play, and that's why we do that 30-day window. So if it just isn't the right fit, let us know and we'll take it back and get you a refund.
Well, thank you so much for this information, Ken, and thanks for showing us how we keep coding simple with the Titan. Well, guys, that's our time here on SNEED-CAST. So like always, give us a like, share, comment, subscribe, and turn on those notifications to stay up to date with all of our great content. We'll see you next time.